TV.
Welcome everybody, my name is Leon Verrooy and this is a new episode of Playgrounds TV with something special because we're kicking off a new format called The Book Club. And we're going to discuss great art books, we're going to discuss great art, and we invited a lot of very inspiring artists. And for tonight, we have a very special one. We have Abigail Larson. She designed beautiful covers, created beautiful tarot sessions like The Nightmare Before Christmas. And she's going to tell everything about her love for art books and her own. Can I welcome Spiridon and Abigail Larson? And Spiridon will be our expert during this book club sessions. So he has the intelligent questions, and yeah, I'm also going to ask some questions. So let's kick this one in, Abigail. Tell us, how did you got into illustration and character design?
Well, I mean, like most artists, I started drawing when I was little. I always wanted to be a children's book illustrator, and that's what I went to school to do, was go specifically for book illustration. But over the years, after I went through art school, I did a couple of children's books, and I didn't like it very much, so I got into comic art, game art, eventually into novel illustration, things like that. Now I work in character design and animation.
All right. Hey, and from an early age, and what was your inspiration back then? Like children books, or do you also look like a lot of comics?
I was really into children's books. I had a lot of fairy tale books, like Arthur Rackham's illustrations really grabbed me at a young age. So I really loved the pen and ink and watercolor style, which is what drew me into doing illustration, was that very classic style of drawing.
All right. Hey, and it's not like that easy to get involved in the industry. So you worked on quite a lot of big projects. How did you get involved or getting those kind of projects, like doing covers for Penny Dreadful, etc.?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it was a bunch of things. One of them was I made good contacts early on. Like I would go to Comic Cons and art workshops, things like that. And in college, I met a lot of people. And also, social media helped a huge amount. Being online from an early age, I started out in DeviantArt and got really popular there. And Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and eventually people started to sort of gravitate to my style and really enjoy my work, which got me noticed by a bunch of publishers. And the other thing was I was sending my portfolio out constantly. I mean, I got tons of rejections, of course, early on, but luckily, after a few years and I kept working on my portfolio, editors would come back and say, hey, we like this. We have something for you. Are you interested? And I took every job I could possibly get until I worked my way up to where I am now, where I'm getting bigger contracts.
Hey, and you told us already that you went to art school, but how did you gain that great skills, right? So your designs always look so beautiful in a quite distinguished line, and you definitely see also like how you tell your stories in your design. So how were you able to gain that skills?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get that one a lot, and it's so hard to answer because it came very organically and with a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of I tested out a lot of things in art school. I tried a lot of traditional pen and ink. I tried to teach myself how to draw digitally. I failed horribly at it. I've only recently gotten into digital art. But it was just so much copying other artists like Arthur Rackham. I did tons of studies of his drawings, lots of painters, just anything I could find that I really liked, I would try and replicate myself. And after I did that when I was younger and I got into art school and I learned more about anatomy and perspective and some of the rules. After years and years of doing that, my own style started to develop. So it was just a lot of time and practice and, trying and failing and until I eventually got to where I was happy with what I was doing. But I mean, I would say probably 10 or 15 years worth of drawing before I got where I am today.
All right. And you have some art books that influenced you? So.
Oh, yeah.
Can you name the one that really stuck into your mind?
The first one that I got that I really, really loved was it was an Arthur Rackham book. And I honestly can't remember the title. It was like Arthur Rackham, a journey through illustration, something like that. It was a really generic old Arthur Rackham book. It's huge. And it had all of his sketches and early work and pencil drawings. That was the first art book I ever got that I really, really loved and like latched onto. I had some great Pre-Raphaelite books, books on John W. Waterhouse that I loved. And once I started to get into more specifically what I liked, I found art styles that really spoke to me, like Tony DiTerlizzi's Field Guide for Spiderwick, which was an art book of just creature art, which I loved, and Gris Grimley's sketchbook that he published. There's so many that really influenced how I wanted to work.
All right. Spiridon, take us away. You have like some really prepared questions, so I'm really eager to know.
Yeah, I mean, half of them are prepared. The half just comes naturally because this is basically stuff that I just like to talk about. And I mean, Abigail and I worked together on her book, but even though we talk a lot, I never really asked you about your influences. So finding this out is super interesting to me because, no, really, how the hell did it never like occur me to just ask you about your collection, right? I don't even know really your collection. Like, do you collect a lot of books? Is because we don't really see something behind you like most.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like I told you, I mean, I moved here to this apartment 3 years ago, but almost all of my book collection is in storage in America still. So most of my collection is in storage. I have a few things here, but not a lot. Like I have books that I bought recently, like Yoshitaka Amano's art book that Dark Horse published is gorgeous, and I have that here. Leonor Fini's collected works. I have a few great art books here, but most of my collection is unfortunately in storage. But I've been collecting them since I was a kid. My dad started me off with collecting art books and taking me to museums, and we'd go to the museum gift shop at a gallery, and he'd buy me the little catalog that went with the art collection, which was so much fun for me. So I always grew up having access to lots of artwork.
That's something that people usually say, right? Like that adults are drawn to books more if they had the experience with them as a kid.
Right.
So for you, it has been art because your parents were also like in some way connected to art.
Collectors, yeah. Both of my parents are really big into art. My mom does historic textile reproduction, so she does interior design basically for historic homes. So she's got a huge library of like books on historic furniture or things like that. And my dad is an archaeologist. He's got a whole huge library of books of all kinds of art from all over the world. So I've been surrounded in it my entire life.
Since you're used to see your work on printed products, like I mean the Rhodex, but there's also like comics and again you're used to it, right? It's nothing new for you. What the hell took you so long to bring out a book? Like,
you mean to make an art book?
Yeah, like it couldn't have been just me. What the hell? Like
No, my problem, Spiridon, seriously, like until you came along, I always thought my work's not there yet. I kept thinking my work's not good enough yet. I don't have enough. I am not ready to publish. That kind of thing. Like for me to do it on my own, I couldn't do it. I need someone, I need a publisher, an editor. Like I need someone to come up and say, look, your stuff is good. We're going to publish it. Otherwise, I would never do it. I would never do it on my own.
Dark Horse or other publishers never really approached you about your personal work?
A couple of them have. Dark Horse especially has. But for one thing, I mean, I'm working with Dark Horse on another project I can't talk about. So that was one of the things when I wrote to them and said I wanted to do cover art, and they said, your work's really good. Is there anything else you want to do? Like hint, hint. And I was like, well, actually, yeah. So that's how that project developed, which is unannounced right now. So I can't talk about it. But yeah, a few publishers have said, your work's great. We should do X, Y, Z. But as far as a personal art book with just my work, I never thought I was ready. So I probably still, if it wasn't for you coming along saying, let's do this, I probably still wouldn't have one out. I would never have done it on my own.
Lucky me. Like,
well, also, I mean, seeing your books on social media, like if I was going to do it, you're the one I would want to do it because they're extremely high quality. If I'm going to do this, I want them to be beautiful. And I think it is.
Thank you. Wow. Okay. Um, so since you have been collecting or have been influenced with art books so early, I wonder what was it that made you choose these as favorites? Because like anything dark and romantic, I wouldn't say that. I mean, you said at what age did you see Arthur Rackham stuff?
Oh, 10 or so.
Yeah.
Not baby, but like a kid, a young kid.
Yeah, what made you like these specific things so much? Because you probably got into the dark romantic and vampire and all these topics
That was
pretty
a
early, right?
little later. Yeah.
Later, okay.
I mean, not much later though, because I really like horror movies. So
Yeah.
like something my dad and I would do is watch the old, like the old, like Bela Lugosi, Dracula, and we
Mm,
watched the Boris Karloff Frankenstein, the old horror Universal classics. And after I got into horror movies, that's kind of when my romantic fairy tale interest merged into liking, monsters and dark stuff. And I can't really say what it was that turned the tide for me. I guess I was a teenager, going through that like goth phase or whatever.
yeah.
I started reading, Sandman by Neil Gaiman, and a slightly darker, but still fantasy things. Sort of opened my mind to that, and my drawing preferences just sort of naturally flowed with that interest.
Mm. So from all that, was doing a tarot something that was on your list, or was it
Oh yeah,
something that so it didn't occur to
yeah.
you when they approached you? You were like, oh, never thought of that. I'm gonna do it. You were always like, I
No,
need to do it.
actually, it's funny. The first tarot deck I did is the Darkwood Tarot with
Mm,
Llewellyn Publishing, and they specialize in tarot decks. And when I was in college, I would go to bookstores and go to the New Age section and see there like whole stacks of Llewellyn tarot decks. And I always thought, I want to do one of those because it's all art. I love the symbolism and the meaning behind them. It was really interesting as an artist visually to come up with
mm,
a collection of um, pieces that all have a shared core. The tarot all
mm.
has this meaning to it. So I thought that'd be kind of neat. So this was back in 2000 something, I don't know, 2006 or so. But I went on the Llewellyn website and printed out on paper their submissions for artists, which back in those days you would print off your portfolio on little sheets of paper and then mail it to them physically.
Mm.
And I never did it, but I had their submission form on my desk for years when I was in college. And, I've since thrown it away, but a couple of years ago, they emailed me out of the blue and said, hey, we have this great tarot deck and an author who wants to work with you. Would you be up for it? And when they told me that, I was just like, man, seriously? After all these years, finally, I get to do one of these.
Nice. Mm.
Yeah. So that was something I'd always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Leon, anything in between?
No, I was interested in like if you are creating this kind of horror influenced world, um, um, how can you create your own Dracula? That's sometimes really difficult because there is like so many adaptations about like how
Yes.
Dracula looks like that actually when you're doing this kind of research, etc., what for you is like the Abigail Larson Dracula? What would work for you?
Yeah, I've drawn him a few times, and my main inspiration for Dracula comes from the text, predominantly, but then also my own preferences. Like, I give him pointy ears, and he's got long hair, a beard. He's not Bela Lugosi. He's a different type of vampire, more like what we do in the Shadows style. Just crazy costumes and things like that. I have a lot of Victorian influence in my work, so I bring that into it as well. So yeah, there's a little bit of monstrosity to them. I extend the ears, I give them really long claws. They have dead skin, so they're still kind of monstery looking, but they have a little bit of, romanticism about them too.
Yeah. When I look to your pictures, they have like this kind of, how do you say, like Victorian, but it also looks in a way to, how can I say, it's so cinematic as well, how you bring
Oh,
it. So it's in
thank
a
you.
sense, it's
Yeah.
illustration, but like how you are composing it and your layout, it really shines through me as like, for like, I can immediately see it in front of me as a film directed by, for example, a Tim Burton kind of
Sure.
atmosphere.
Thank.
So is
Yeah,
this kind of cinematic background helping you in designing it?
I think so. I love movies. I love movies so much. I watch a ton of movies. I'm a big horror fan. Drama, period, documentary. I mean, I just love film so much, and it's always on when I'm working. So that definitely has a huge influence on my work. When I'm laying out things, especially coming from working in comics as well, you do kind of have to understand a little bit of cinematography to lay out scenes, to compose your piece. You know, the composition has to flow in a certain way for it to read for the viewer and make sense. So I think I do have a bit of that influence. Also animation. I've been watching animated movies since I was a kid, which also has, a huge influence as well.
Hey, you're now working at Netflix, I understood. So you're now doing character design for them. We're not going to ask anything about
Yes.
it. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. But it's a different
Yeah,
thing, right? Doing
it is.
animation and designing for animation and designing for books and for comics, because
Absolutely.
you have so much time, and it doesn't make nobody cares how many hairs you will draw or how many details in a dress. But if things should be animated, it's a different cup of coffee, right? So in what way is
Yeah.
it influencing you designing for animation?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been working now with Netflix for a little over a year. I can say I am working on Blue Eye Samurai, which is, it was announced, but there is no release date yet. That we're still early in production. So I'm doing character design for that series. And um, it's very interesting for me because for one thing, I've had to learn to work completely digitally, which is not something I normally do. Normally I work in pen and ink and scan and then do a little bit of Photoshop. Here, I have to work completely digital. And I also, like you said, you have to simplify your designs. So what I'm thinking more about now when I'm drawing characters is their silhouette, their shapes, things like that, that will read easily and quickly for the animators when they go to animate them. And it has definitely been a really interesting challenge, but really good for me in my personal work too, because I've gotten much faster and much better at composing images, at drawing anatomy, things like that, because this work is so fast paced. We're cranking out designs constantly, so it's definitely helped me to work a lot faster and a lot smarter with my design work.
Yeah, because animation is also a lot about gesturing, like having this clear
Yes,
kind of silhouetting and telling
exactly.
everything in the movement or in like the non-verbal kind of communication. So you don't
Mhm.
have like text or dialogue all the time. You have it's show not tell. So I can imagine that it helps you a lot. With this amount of experience, what is still for you a big challenge when doing designs?
Oh my goodness. Um, I'm sure there's a lot because every time I sit down to start a piece, it's like, where do I begin?
Yeah, because
Um,
sometimes people think that like from your skill set you know everything, but you still have to
oh no.
puzzle things out, right?
Of course, I still struggle with things like composition. I do have to think really long and hard about it. And sometimes I'll draw things and get halfway into the piece and realize it just doesn't work. The perspective's completely wrong and then have to scrap it and start over. Even though I know these things, these are skills I've learned years ago and still practice to this day. But, I still mess up all the time. I still have to go back and fix things later on. I definitely struggle with things like architecture and vehicles and anything mechanical, stuff like that. I have to look at tons of reference photos for that. All of that is a huge struggle, but it's just part of the job. Once you get into things like animation and comic books, you have to learn how to draw just about everything under the sun. If it's a thing that exists, a comic art author will put it in there, and you'll have to figure out how does it work, how does it fit in the scene, how does the character interact with these things, and that's all very important to know. So you just kind of have to learn on the go.
Hey, and I can also imagine that it takes a lot of research. So
Oh yeah.
how do you work? Like, is it looking at a lot of fashion magazines, or are you going to museums or shows, or how do you prepare yourself for a project or a new upcoming assignment?
Google.
Yeah.
I go on Google. Google's where I start, but something that helps me a lot, particularly with a lot of the shows that I'm working on and things like that, a lot of museums have online catalogs. So, like, because I love working in the Victorian period, the Met Museum has a huge catalog of Victorian costumes and objects. There's online catalogs for auction houses that have furniture from different periods. Things like that are a huge resource for me. So I download tons of images, PDFs, things like that, and have like just lots of organized databases of reference photos so that I can always have something to look back on. I use Pinterest as well, just for organizing things per project. That helps too, for like inspirational photos, that kind of thing. But the internet is such a huge help.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
It's funny that you mentioned furniture in that way, because that's basically what we start with when looking at your book, right? I'm gonna go a bit more into this book that we created, and we start with a mirror, and everything is so delicately drawn out, and it shows that you like to look at these things. You know, it seems so natural.
Yeah.
When we make these mirrors, when you created these mirrors, and also the way that that crimson, your favorite color, as you told me, basically is also framed, and the roses around it are like entangling this delicate portrait. And it just shows exactly, again, a frame. I mean, this is basically what it's about, and it shows that, in my opinion, that that this is also something that you. It's too plain to say that you like it, but I think you understand it very well. So when you were working on artwork, on your personal artwork, did you know it would end up in a book eventually? Did you produce something with thinking, because you worked on printed stuff before, right? Did you know what's gonna happen with it eventually? Did you create for print?
No, not at all. I mean, I make my art. I mean, this probably sounds selfish, but I make my art for myself. I make it because there's something in me that wants to tell a certain story or wants to illustrate something in particular. Like I'd read, a story by Edgar Allan Poe and want to draw one of the characters or something. Like I do it just because visually I have to get it out of me and put it on paper. So I never really draw things for the intent of printing them. I would draw them just to express it visually in the only way I really know how to do it, which is to draw it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing bonus to have it printed. I never thought that I would do that. I wanted to, but with illustration, it's such a tough career. You don't really know where your work's going to end up or if it will end up getting picked up. But yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, if you're saying that your artwork is supposed to tell a story, how were you going to tell it if not in a book?
Just for me. It was for my own personal enjoyment.
Okay.
It's great that it is. I've definitely had dreams of having, like, one of the things I'm working on now is having my own, telling my own story and then illustrating it myself. That kind of stuff, that's sort of, it's coming. It's in the works, it's down the line. But for the most part, I was drawing other people's stories. When I started out doing children's books, I was given a script or given a manuscript and then told to illustrate. So I was illustrating for work for other people, and that was work drawing. But my own personal work was really just for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Until now.
Is it in a way also a kind of a visual diary?
A bit, yeah. Oh, for sure.
I'm looking because Spiridon can do things at the same time. So he's flipping through the book and he's asking intelligent questions. So it.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I knew your work from online, right? But the first thing that I did was checking if you had a book. Like, it was the first thing that came to mind, because this kind of art usually ends up in something like this. So again, lucky me that
that's amazing to hear that.
Together.
Thank you. I never looked at my art in that way. It was just work for a long time. It was just paying bills and getting the job done, and it was fun work. I got my first comic cover was the Penny Dreadful cover, and that was so much fun. It was a dream job. I loved the show. It was amazing to get to work on that. Things like that sort of changed the tide for me, that my work could be fun and it could also be work at the same time.
Yeah. In terms of life and how it influences you, I mean, you moved from where in America? Where were you from?
Virginia.
So you moved from Virginia to Torino, which is quite the step.
It's a huge step, yeah.
Now, Italy being known as a Renaissance country, aside from the much older times and with ancient Rome and everything that Italy is known for, the Renaissance is probably, for someone who is so much into ornaments and all that, I mean, Italy is probably perfect.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Yes. My first trip to Italy was when I was 18. I came here on a school trip with my art class, and we came here just to go to museums and study the artwork here. It's been a huge influence on me for a long time. I've always loved it.
Where did you go when you had the school trip? Which city?
We did a bunch of cities. We did Milan, Florence, and Rome, and Venice.
I fucking love Florence. It's
such a beautiful city. All of them.
I mean,
honestly, It's just gorgeous. It's so beautiful. And so inspiring, you know, just walking around and seeing the architecture is so wonderful. The museums and galleries, it's incredible.
So you're absorbing all that, right? Like you basically live at the source and you're absorbing it. And so Leon was right when he was saying it is a visual diary in a way, because you're just taking all that and it's like in your head, and then you spit it out. And it ended up in a book.
Certainly.
That's amazing. Cool.
Yeah, I think also after having moved here, I've been here since 2016. I feel like my work has definitely improved in a strange way. I don't know if it's that I'm thinking about it more or that I'm not stressing about my work as much, but I definitely feel like my work has improved, you know, since moving here.
Is it also in that sense? Are you walking around with your sketchbook all the time in these kind of cities? I can imagine, just to get inspiration or to make references, or maybe, or do you like making with your phone? You're making pictures a lot.
I was going to say with the phone, I take a lot of photos. Yeah, I used to walk around with my sketchbook a lot. I don't so much anymore. I'm just a little too busy. You know, once things sort of loosen up here with COVID and everything, I want to go back out into the city and sit and draw. But for now, I just take pictures of everything that I like and bring it back home and work on it later.
Hey, now working at Netflix and seeing your own world building, so you see the whole film industry, because of the streaming, is like having a huge demand for content and IPs and stories, etc. So can you imagine that you would create ever your own series out of your worlds?
Oh gosh, I would love to. That would be a dream come true for sure. Yeah, I would love to create something with my own style and have it all be my work. That's the dream eventually.
But would it be an adapted story, or do you also have an ambition to write your own stories and to tell your own?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, both. I have lots of ideas for pitches. I have ideas that are based on, you know, fairy tales or existing stories, and I have my own concepts as well. So hopefully one day one of those will pan out.
All right. Well, we will look very much forward to that series or to that feature, and definitely looking forward to the new art book together with Spiridon. That would be like also a really big treat. Thank you so much, Abigail, for sharing all your knowledge, sharing your great art with us. Hopefully we meet in person soon. Also, thank you very much, audience, for joining us in this first episode of the Book Club. I hope you like it. Please leave your responses in the chat. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and see you next time at another Book Club. Thank you. Bye-bye.